Just going to be a second. It's on mute. I don't know what happened.
It's probably going into two different microphones at the same time.
Oh.
So maybe your regular computer mic, and is there another something device over there?
No, that's just it just plugs it in. Okay, we'll see what happens.
You must be hearing yourself coming back from them.
Yeah, I just have to figure this out for a second because I can't really, the speakers are off, so I can't use the recording. I think it's still feedback. Okay. Sorry about this.
It's okay. Been there, done that.
When you can't breathe, it's even harder, you know? I do this way. Welcome. The City of Kingston Office of Community Development is hosting 3 public informational meetings for the upcoming fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant Program application process. The Community Development Block Grant Program, known as CDBG, is an entitlement program that provides an annual grant on a formula basis to the City of Kingston. Launched in 1974, the CDBG program is one of the longest continuously run programs of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. HUD awards grants to entitlement community grantees to carry out a wide range of community development activities directed towards revitalizing neighborhoods and providing improved community facilities and services for principally low and moderate income persons. Entitlement communities develop their own programs and funding priorities. The City of Kingston will be working on laying out their priorities as they form a new 5-year consolidated plan, which will encompass 2024 through 2028. The fiscal year 2024 application process will be part of the first year of the 5-year consolidated plan. As in the past, it is presumed the city's priorities will include infrastructure improvements, neighborhood facility improvements, code enforcement, public services, public infrastructure, and parks infrastructure. The fiscal year 2024 application was made available October 12th and will be due December 9th no later than noon. The application must be completed in its entirety or it will be deemed unaccepted. This year, the city will once again allow for those interested parties to submit applications for public service programs. These programs must meet HUD's eligibility criteria as well as fall within a HUD matrix code. When working on your application, we highly encourage you to reach out to our office to ensure your program or activity will meet the criteria set forth by HUD. Please keep in mind these activities must primarily benefit low and moderate income persons, with the majority of participants being residents of the city of Kingston. Examples of qualifying public services would include, but are not limited to, childcare, healthcare, job training, recreation, education, public safety, fair housing, and senior services. Public services do not include payments to individuals for food, parties, clothing, rent, or other income payments. Eligible program costs for public services include payment for labor, supplies and materials to administer the program, and the cost of operating that portion of the program. In addition to completing the application, there are 9 exhibits that are required to accompany the application. Fairly new to the application is a question form related to previous CDBG funding and a question form regarding federal eligibility and consolidated plan priorities. The applicant will also need to submit a copy of the previous year's Form 990. If the applicant does not file a Form 990, they must provide a copy of the tax form that they do file. All applications must be completed and received in their entirety and be reviewed for qualification. HUD's intent for CDBG funding for program services is intended as seed money. By that I mean it is meant to be used as startup funding for programming. If applying for programming that has been funded in the past, the applicant must significantly expand on the program. That does not mean stating a few more people will benefit from the program or activity. It must have a substantial expansion, or it must be a new activity. Once the city has determined which activities will be funded, we will write the annual action plan and make it available for a 30-day public comment period prior to submitting it to HUD for their review and approval. Upon approval from HUD, the city will enter into contract with HUD and request the funding for the new program year be released. Absolutely no monies may be spent on these activities prior to the city and HUD being in contract. If the money is spent prior to this, you will not be reimbursed. Our fiscal year begins on July 1st and runs through June 30th. There have been times the federal government has not authorized the U.S. Treasury to release the CDBG funding, so there have been delays. This is a reimbursable program. So as stated in the application, it is imperative the applicant have the cash flow to run their programming activity until they are able to be reimbursed. If you need to borrow money in order to run your program, then you should reconsider applying. All applicants are to supply us with information regarding all sources of funding. Our office is available for technical assistance and guidance on what qualifies and what does not. If your activity has been chosen to be funded, you will enter into an agreement with the city after the city has contracted with HUD. At that time, you will be walked through the process and it will be explained to you what else you will need as far as documentation in order to submit for reimbursement. Should at any time during the program year you find your programming is or has changed, you must contact our office immediately to be sure you still qualify, and you will need to make requests for any changes in writing. It is not a given that such changes will qualify, so it is also not a given you will be reimbursed for expenditures. Sometimes the budgets change or need modifications, so this too needs to be brought to our attention so we can help in order to make sure the reimbursement process goes smoothly. I think I've pretty much covered everything at this point. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question about eligibility of the organization. Not what I've done before, but I'm working with the MBA, Midtown Business Alliance.
Sure.
And we're looking at a program, at offering a program, so I'm finding out whether this might be a way for funding it. But the MBA is current, I guess it's really, can you use a fiscal sponsorship or sponsor, or do you have to have already be?
Well, if you can work with somebody who's a nonprofit, are you a not-for-profit?
Yeah, I mean, it's been applied for, but it's not,
Not approved yet.
it's not approved yet.
Okay, how long ago was it applied for? A while ago?
A year, I think. The MBA has received some funding from the city, but that's different than CDBG. you know, so-
Right. I have to find out about that. What kind of programming are you looking at?
It's an educational program for I always hate all this language, underserved, marginalized. So it's economic development and entrepreneurial education
Okay.
and training. Definitely, and the whole point is for it to be free to, people who really.
Sure. I would certainly not deter you from putting an application in. You have until December, and we have time to figure out if you need to have a sponsorship of some other sort, or if,
I mean, we already have a fiscal sponsor relationship with it, or within 501c3. I wasn't sure whether you wanted the MBA itself.
no, you don't have to be yourself, but you should be working with a not-for-profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should be fine.
But the MBA can apply, or does the nonprofit fiscal sponsor have to apply?
No, they don't have, the fiscal sponsor doesn't have to, but we need to have something in writing that says that.
Yeah, no, for a couple of years, that's how we funded, Made in Kingston was funded through the CDBG the first couple of years we ran it. So, and that was, I think had its 501c3. So.
Yeah, if you have somebody that you can work with so that you can move forward with this, that's fine.
Okay.
Questions?
Just kind of going through the details about what economic development activities consist of.
And sometimes we can apply for a certified, it's called a CDBO, Certified Economic Development Organization. That's a little bit of a process. It's not a big deal, but we could look into that depending on what the circumstances are. And the way you're structuring it, because you're saying it's for free, so then because you need to be able to show that it's predominantly low moderate income people, you would, I'm presuming, offer like a scholarship, because that's the easiest way. Because you have to be able to have some form of backup for the fact that they're low moderate income without actually.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the easy part for what we're doing, so, yeah. Going both for Transart and for this, so.
Okay.
So here's kind of a question. Given that we have identified various models that are feasible with developing in establishing a youth innovation center, some of which are, private, public, hybrid, including a nonprofit in the mix so that materials can be donated, with the tax benefit and taxes not charged and so forth. Are any or all of those potential models something that could possibly work under the economic development services?
It's possible, and I'm not sure how many we can have. It's something that we haven't really, I think we've only used it once in the 19 years that I've been here.
Oh, no, once you've done,
The special economic development activities.
interesting, okay, good to know. Is that because people didn't meet the criteria or because people weren't applying for that or?
It's, most of the people have been applying for public services in the sense that they're doing youth programs.
Yeah.
So like Boys and Girls Club, they come and they ask for funding for specific activities for programs within that. We haven't, I can't remember who it was, but I know it's only one time in the 19 years I've been here that somebody has actually come and we've done the CDBO. Not to say it can't be done, it's just, it's a little bit more involved. And the other thing is, just so you know, we are also starting our 5-year consolidated plan. So it's the vision of the city for the next 5 years. And whatever happens for 2024 is also the first year of that 5-year plan. So when we start announcing the meetings and the workshops for that, I highly encourage everybody, to come because your voice will be heard. If you think that there's something that the city should be looking at or doing, that's the time to let us know. We're working with a consultant who's going to help us form that 5-year plan. So, if you have ideas or
So this is going to be public hearings for that one?
Have you already chosen the consultant?
yes,
It's not Lauren, is it?
No.
Okay, good.
no, it's a consultant that specifically helps with community development block grant program.
Oh,
And the consolidated plans. I don't have dates yet. We just started working with them in the next couple of weeks. I'll start having bi-weekly meetings with them and we'll start setting up a schedule for when they're going to have meetings with stakeholders or meetings with the public or meetings with the council members.
okay, so if we received the information for this, are we automatically going to receive information about that as well? Or do we have to?
Well, there's going to be public announcements. There's going to be in the newspaper. They'll be on the city's Facebook page, on the city website. I think if Amy has your email address, I can see about having a news blast put out. But it's really the consultants that are putting this together.
So,
It's really the consultants who are putting the media stuff out there.
yeah, okay.
But it'll be public, everybody will know about it.
Okay.
I think the other thing I was kind of looking at is the job training aspect, because we're talking about deconstruction training and potentially trying to get the county to support deconstruction as a growing industry.
So with the job training, you have to, some of these people have to actually leave your activity, your program and have jobs in place. So as part of, in order to make sure that you qualify, and when you're set up, if you tell us that you're doing job training, it gets set up as job training. So when your activity is finished, before you get your final reimbursement, you have to supply us with a client data sheet, and that's all sorts of information that we ask for, and we ask you how many jobs that, you know, these people were placed in. If you come back and say, you know, we didn't have anybody that's placed in the job, it's gonna be kind of hard to explain to HUD that we just, you know, went through this process and nobody was able to get a job out of it.
I think the idea would be to work with, based on a consultant that we're already dealing with, the idea would be to work with existing construction companies who want to hire people who know, because there's simply a dearth of people who know how to do deconstruction. You know, a lot of people know how to smash things and cart it off to the landfill, but deconstruction is a series of skills. So if they know that the county is going to be pushing deconstruction, and then they'll be wanting to, you know, learn it. It all has to work together. We're trying to work through legislature as well, indirectly. Okay, that sounds like it's a possibility. But yeah, makes sense that you prove that people got jobs.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you're gonna put 20, 25 people through this program. I mean, at the end, they'd like to see at least, I'm gonna say, I can't put a number on it, but I mean, at least 2 or 3 people were able to get employment after this because of what they learned. It would be hard to say that, you know, 20 to 25 people went through this and then nobody was able to get employment after.
Hopefully more than that.
Well, I mean, I'm just using that number.
Yeah, gotcha.
I don't like to go too high because what happens is in your application, if you say you're going to help 100 people, and I put that in there, and at the end of the day, you come back and you say, oh, well, we only had 3. They're gonna be like, so,
Yeah.
because, you know, when you're talking about the amount of people that you're serving, it's somewhat, kind of like how much of the funding is going per person for that training. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. I mean, they seem like they would evaluate it based on their investment versus return. How many people actually get it?
Yeah, I mean.
So, community economic development. Means what exactly?
That would go along the line with job creation. You know, having a program that would produce jobs at the end. So, in the new 5-year comp plan, I don't know what the city is going to choose as being their objectives. But the last 5 years was basically housing, public services, and infrastructure. So not to say that you wouldn't apply for something that might qualify, it might not be within the realm of their vision.
So you said housing, public what, and infrastructure?
Public services,
any kind of business having 5 or fewer employees.
And CDBG funding is, the purpose of it is startup money, so it's like seed money. So that's why we emphasize that if you've been funded in the past, or you're going to be funded now, if you come back, it's not us that says, that HUD says that you have to either significantly expand on your activity, or you have to have a completely different activity.
Well, in our case, this would be totally new.
Mhm.
I don't know if my employer ever had any kind of grant in the past. I've been there for 2 years, but certainly there has never been a Youth Innovation Center before. So. Okay, eligible activities says purchase of equipment, but I thought I said purchase. I thought I saw purchase of equipment somewhere else.
It depends on what the equipment is. You can't buy a backhoe, you can't buy a press, you can't buy cars.
Okay.
I'm quite sure we have an extensive list of what the equipment is or isn't. Things like if you have a public service where it requires computers, then you can get computers for that purpose. Sometimes that's a little hard because if the program ends, then those computers are still there and they're not going to be used. So technically, we can come and get those back. So you just kind of have to be cognizant of what your uses are going to be and what you would be asking for.
Part of the equipment that might be used might be things like trucks, but obviously that sounds like that's.
Yeah, we cannot buy anything that's
And then some
wheel.
aspect might be tools that could be used either by repair folks or by folks doing construction, or shared by people that might have an office there or a maker space there. So I don't know, maybe that, and there would need to be some kind of computers, and presumably there'd be an area where stuff could be sold, although some of it might be given away. So then there would be sales equipment like cash registers or things like that, and shelving space, racks. So I'm not sure how much of that.
Things like the shelving and the racks would be okay. I really have to look at the computers we haven't. We've already been down that road, and technically we can come and get those computers back because we don't know that they don't go into the hands of somebody for personal private use afterwards. I'm not going to say that it's not onus to go through this process, but you've been through this before. Yeah.
What about things like if we had wind up with an old building that we had to fix up?
We no longer do capital improvements or infrastructure for other entities other than the city.
Other than
the city.
Oh.
That's why they only allow for 15%. But 15%, by the way, is all HUD allows us to use for public services. That's not us, that's HUD.
Yeah.
So 15% is all we have for public services. And we just guesstimate what it is at this point. We never know. We don't know until sometime next year before our fiscal year starts. So we're kind of on a guesstimate. It could be a little higher, it could be a little lower, but we let everybody know that up front.
So if it was the city applying for this, versus say my nonprofit. You're saying that,
Well, the city uses the funds for this, like the sewers and the parks. And municipal buildings that are public facilities for community use. And the county also had, I don't know if they still do, but they also were receiving CDBG dollars through the state.
oh, okay. But for those specific areas you just described.
I don't know what they use theirs for. The state has different guidelines. How does HUD, the state has different guidelines than what we do. We're an entitlement community, and the state is not. They apply for the money, and then they turn around and like each municipality, not the city because we already get ours, but other municipalities within the county can apply for funding.
Oh, I got you.
So if you were just saying, maybe you would be out in the town of Ulster. Well, you can see if the town of Ulster has any sort of funding, because iPark is not in the city of Kingston.
That's true, right? Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm from Dutchess, so I tend to forget these things.
Well, even people that live here, they're like, oh, no, it's a Kingston address. It is, but it's town of Ulster, and then and now that there's a town of Kingston, there's a town of Ulster, and the city of Kingston.
Okay. And were you saying this has to be the city of Kingston?
This has to be within the city of Kingston.
The area called East Kingston separate?
Yep.
It is.
That's also.
I wasn't sure if that was
Yeah.
like a section of the city. That's the one. Is it possible to email you the question?
Sure, our email addresses are on here. Our phone numbers are on here.
Right on the front. Gotcha. Okay. Great. Well, I feel like I don't want to stay here and hold you up. What else?
Okay. So you get on the inside, you'll see A. Peterson, my administrative assistant. You can either check with her or myself. We're the only two people in the office.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. You too.
Oh, the other thing is if you put an application in, after, I'm gonna say, I think it's gonna be the January meeting. Amy will send out emails and let you know that the committee is meeting. And she will also suggest which meeting you should come to, because if they have questions, they're gonna wanna know the answers before they start deciding who they might wanna allocate to. And if you're not here to answer the questions,
Yeah.
you might not get the funding, or you might not get as much funding because they don't have a lot of time to deliberate.
Yeah.
But Amy will also reach out with it. So what happens also is you submit your application by December 4th. Amy and I review them for completeness and for to make sure that they meet a eligibility and a matrix. And if we have questions, we'll let you know. And then what happens is once the committee and the council get these, they review them, and if we give them a time frame to say, hey, if you have questions, you need to get them to us so we can ask you guys for any clarification before we start sitting and having meetings for everybody to come to. Sometimes meetings can be really long, and sometimes they're short. All depends on how many people come and how many questions there are.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. I am going to make an attempt here to. Thank you.